Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so we were just speaking about how they want females to be athletic, just again to increase the depopulation agenda, which is actually working out very well for them. You know, if you look at many countries are not giving birth, and the child birth rate, which is supposed to be two for every woman, it's like one on some countries, 1.5 in some countries. It's like decreasing a lot. They say by the year 2100, Japan's probably not even going to exist anymore because everyone's going to be dead, and the whole population is just going to be wiped out because no one's having kids. So they're doing very well. Let's be very frank and honest. They're doing a very, very good job when it comes to depopulation, and all these people that care about careers, and they care about sports and athletics, and they don't care about giving birth to children. Then you just turn around to them and you tell them, look, listen, if your mom exactly was like you wouldn't even be here today. And again, these people are seen as unfit. You know, the females that are misled into turning away from what they're supposed to be doing as a woman, they're seen as unfit. Because if their own mothers were like them, their own mothers wouldn't have given birth to them. Do you understand? And in a way, that is pushing a message out from them that we are so worthless, we don't even have the right to live. Because if my mother was like me, my mother wouldn't have given birth and I wouldn't be here. So why am I even here? Do you understand how these people operate when it comes to labeling people unfit and fit? Wallah understand. So we'll move on from that. Violence inculcated through entertainment. It talks about pornography, they talk about violence, the language is going to be rough, and all of this is going to be shown in the theatres and the televisions. He said this in 1969. He went on to say that it will be made in the open. You'll see people in movies doing everything you can think of, okay? People's attitude towards death would change. Why? Because there's so much violence. Violence would be made so graphic when the people get shot in their head, and everything is going to be made so graphic so that people's attitudes towards death would change. Like, death is not such a bad thing. Because when you need to, eliminate many people, a lot of the people you're going to eliminate, they might be afraid of death. So how about you change the entire perception of death? How about you make it cool? You go make it in action films, action movies, thrillers. How about you make death cool? So when we ship all these people into those specific rooms to eliminate them, at least they won't think it to be such a bad thing. So now you understand why they will increase violence in movies. He says, as regards to music, he made a rather straightforward statement like, music will get worse. In 1969, rock music was getting more and more unpleasant. It was interesting the way he expressed it. It would get worse, acknowledging that it was already bad. Lyrics would become more openly sexual. No new sugary romantic music would be publicized like all that which had been written before that time. All of the old music would be brought back on certain radio stations and records for older people to hear, and older folks would have sort of their own radio station to hear. As for the younger people, their music, it would get worse and worse, and it would be on their stations. He seemed to indicate that one group would not listen or hear the other group's music. Older folks would just refuse to hear the junk that was offered to young people, and the young people would accept the junk because it identified them as their generation and helped them feel distinct from the older generation. Imagine saying this in the 1969s. Is this not sounding like today? Is this not today? The old people, you go to old people and you tell them about drill, you tell them about this, and they say that is junk, that is utterly useless. And then you go and tell the youngs about what the old people listen to, and they say that's boring and utterly useless. Do you not see how they've already separated the elderly from the young ones? Do you not see how they separated the elderly from the young ones? It's ajib. I remember at the time thinking that would not last very long, because even young kids wouldn't like the junk when they got a chance to hear the older music that was prettier, and they would gravitate towards it. Unfortunately, I was wrong about that. When the kids get through their teens and into their 20s, some of them improve their taste in music, and unfortunately, he was right. They get used to this junk, and that's all they want. And all of them can't stand whoever. He went on to say that music would carry a message to the young, and nobody would even know the message was there. They would just think it was loud music. At the time, I didn't understand quite what he meant by that. But in retrospect, I think we know now what the messages are in the music for the young. So if you look at music, it's always about the same topics. It's always going to be about the opposite gender. It's always going to be something related to sexuality, always something sexually related. And it will always be about violence, and it will always be about drugs and criminality. So this, in general, is what maybe you'd probably say like 90% of the music that they will show to the young people. It's always about the same topics. You think to yourself, how can people be repeating the same thing, but the people are interested in it? How can you repeat the same subjects? It's always the same subjects. It's always going to be about women. It's going to be about violence. It's going to be about drugs. It's going to be about killings. And it's going to be the same. Every single person, every single week, every single year, the same thing is repeating again and again and again. It's because when a person listens to something that's being constantly repeated, this is what pushes people to act. This is how they do brainwashing. When they do brainwashing, they will make people listen to the same things repetitively again and again and again and again and again and again until it becomes ingrained into the mind of that individual. So this guy who is constantly listening to these same topics again and again and again and again, he's going through a brainwashing. He's being indoctrinated until he gets to the stage where he's going to act upon everything that he's hearing. He's going to hear that females are worthless things and that they have no rights in reality and that they should just be used and abused and thrown around. He's going to act upon that. Then he's going to realize, you know what? I need to stab this person. Why? Because he looked at me in the wrong way. Why is he looking at me in the wrong way? He's got into his head, I stabbed that person. And then another singer is going to say, I stabbed that person, I stabbed that person. He keeps hearing, I stabbed that person, to such an extent that he now needs to actualize these words that are in his head. I stabbed this person, I stabbed this person, I stabbed... He goes and stabs this person. You know, they say, oh, music doesn't have an effect on the young kids and the youth. Of course it does. Music is an indoctrination tool. Music is a brainwashing technique. Music is a brainwashing technique. And what they can do with music is they will sing about one topic. It might even be about today's been a nice day. Today's been a nice day. But what they will do is they will hidden. It's silent. It's silent, but it's enough to go into your ears. The silent words are, I'm going to murder this person. I'm going to murder this person. I'm going to murder. So you keep listening to this song. The tune is nice. The beat is nice. Everything is nice. And you think the words are nice and the lyrics are nice. But there are hidden words that you can't truly hear unless you amplify those silent words that are being said. It's very, very silent. It's very, very discreet, but it's there. I'm going to kill that person. I'm going to kill. And the person is just there shaking his head. He's getting happy. He thinks all is good. But there are these words that are entering his mind. Words are powerful. Words are powerful. Certain words can be like spells. Certain words can be like spells. So this is what he means when he says, he went on to say that the music would carry a message to the young and nobody would even know the message. nobody would even know the message. So if you look at how the music is, they speak about it. Imagine talking about this in the 1960s, and you're living it today. You're living it today. Because again, part of the agenda is to separate the young from the old, to turn the old against the elderly. And the elderly need to be made to feel so useless that they are just going to go and eliminate themselves. They're going to go and eliminate themselves, and that's it. And then they say, we don't even care about the elderly anyways. Look what they say here. Where is it? Is it this part? Not only could you not change them, i.e. the elderly people, because they're so stuck in their ways, not only can you not change them, but they are relatively unimportant. Once they live out their lives and are gone, the younger generation being formed are the ones that would be important for the future in the 21st century. So do you hear these nations, certain countries that say, we're thinking about the youth, we're thinking about the youth, we're thinking about the future, we're thinking about the future, and they bring singers into their countries, and they bring all these entertainments and gaming industries into their countries because they're thinking about the kids, Why is their attention focused on the kids and not the elderly? It's because the elderly are so stuck in their ways, and they say, you know what, they're worthless anyways, they're going to die very soon. We don't care about these elderly people, they're going to die. Who cares if they're stuck in their way? These young, easily malleable minds, the young people, how about we direct our attention and our focus to these young people? Because they're going to be the future. They're going to be the future. And you'd say, oh, okay, so you're going to focus your minds on the future. All right, can we see what you're focusing for the future? It's not the religion, number one. It's to equality between men and women. It's gamings. It's yoga. It's, loving and respecting the disbelievers and everyone. That is what it is. Indoctrination. You're indoctrinating the young people. Brainwashing them en masse. May Allah have mercy upon them and protect them from all this evil that's coming upon them. Travel restriction and implanted ID. Travel, instead of being easy for old folks, would be very restricted. People would need permission to travel, and they would need a good reason to travel. If you didn't have a good reason for your travel, you would not be allowed to travel. Everyone would need ID. This would be at first an ID card, and you would carry it on your person, and you must show when you are asked for it. It was already planned that later on some sort of device would be developed to be implanted under the skin that would be coded specifically to identify the individual. This would eliminate the possibility of false identification and also eliminate the possibility of people saying, well, I lost my ID. Listen to this. This guy is talking in 1969 about chips being planted under people's skins. And they did that in 2022 in Sweden. If you look at Sweden, there are people that put chips in their hands, and they go to the shop and they buy something and they just scan their hands, and beep, they've got their details there on that chip. So how's this guy talking about this in 1969 when they were using typewriters? Or typewriters was popular during then? It's because these people are 50 to 100 to 200 to 300 to maybe 400 years ahead of the people. That's the reality. They're way ahead. It's like H.G. Wells talking about planes being used to drop bombs in a world war before planes were even being used to travel. This guy was talking about planes being used to drop bombs before planes were even used to travel. Imagine that. It's because these people are 40, 50 years ahead. They're involved in secret societies, secret gatherings, secret groups where they have information of certain things that are not public to the people. Courtesy of the jinns, yes. So you can't say I've lost my ID. I lost my passport, I lost my documents. Well, you have to forcibly get that chip. You can never lose it now. You never have the excuse of saying, I lost my passport. Difficulty about the skin implant, that ID was stated to getting material that would stay in or under the skin without causing foreign body reaction whereby the body will reject it or cause infection. And this would have to be a material on which information could be recorded and retrieved by some sort of scanner while it was not rejected by the body. Silicone was mentioned. Silicone at the time was thought to be well tolerated. It was used to augment. So, they've already done that anyways. But implanted IDs, food control. Food supplies would come under tight control. If population growth didn't slow down, food shortages could be created in a hurry and people would realize the dangers of overpopulation. It's crazy, isn't it? You see how they play around with the people. Ultimately, whether the population slows down or not, the food supply is to be brought under centralized control so that people would have enough to be well nourished, but they would not have enough to support any fugitive from the new system. In other words, if you had a friend or relative who didn't sign on, growing one's own food would be outlawed. This would be done under some sort of pretext. In the beginning, I mentioned there would be two purposes for everything. One, the ostensible purpose, and the real purpose. And the ostensible purpose here would be that growing your own vegetables was unsafe. It would spread disease or something like that. So the acceptable idea was to protect the consumer, but the real idea was to limit the food supply, and growing your own food would be illegal. And if you persist in illegal activities like growing your own food, then you're a criminal. Now, diseases have been made so popular since first they had this bird flu, and the bird flu was somewhat popular, but then it died down. They created these mass vaccinations and they realized it was all a scam. And they actually did get scammed of millions and billions of pounds. And then there was COVID. COVID spread like wildfire. Billions of people supposedly got the vaccine, afraid of this big, scary monster. Then there's this bird flu that they keep talking about. How these chickens they've got bird flu, and you have to let the government know if you've got more than 5-10 chickens, because bird flu is so severe, it's killing everything. Even though chickens, the place that they live is being set on fire, and so many chickens are being burnt to death. But then they go out and say, look, so many chickens are dying because of bird flu. No, chickens are not dying because of bird flu. Chickens are dying because you're burning them. Okay, but all of this talk about disease and virus and pandemics and infectious diseases is so that people become so afraid of diseases when the government comes and says, look, if you grow your own vegetable, there's this new disease called vegetabilitis that just comes out whenever you yourself grow vegetables. Then everyone's going to be afraid. They're going to say, yes, we support you, government. We don't want no farmers. Farmers are already being attacked left, right, centre in many countries. We don't want farmers. We want the government to grow food in these buildings where they have all these chemicals and everything being sprayed on, monitored 24/7, because government, we trust you. We trust you, government. And then, of course, you're going to be seen as a criminal. If you don't take your COVID vaccine, you're already seen as a criminal. You weren't allowed to go into certain places. You weren't allowed to fly to certain countries. Why were you not allowed to fly to certain countries? Because you're a criminal in reality. Criminality doesn't just mean that you steal something. Criminality can also mean, according to their definition, being against their agenda. You're a criminal if you're against their agenda. And if you persist in illegal activities like growing your own food, then you're a criminal. All of this is what? To centralize control over the food supply. And then if you look at C40 cities, go on Google and write C40 cities. And you go and look at the agendas, C40 cities. These are to do with the 40 biggest cities around the world. Go and look at their agendas. They talk about how much meat a person would be allowed to eat. Certain amount of grams of meat a person is going to be allowed to eat in a week. How can they be able to control how much grams of meat you're allowed to eat unless they have control over the meat and the food supply themselves? And they want that meat to go all the way down to zero, where a person has 0 grams of meat. What's happening to the cows? What's happening to the sheep, the goats? What's happening to all of them? Very, very good question. Then he goes on to speak about weather control. There was a mention then of weather. This was another really striking statement. He said, we can or soon will be able to control the weather. He said, I'm not merely referring to dropping iodide crystals into the cloud to precipitate rain. That's already there. But real control. Listen to what he says here. I'm not referring to dropping iodide crystals into the cloud to precipitate rain. That's already there. So in 1969, they were already using iodide crystals to form rain or supposed precipitate rain in certain areas. They were already using that in 1969. 1969. They were already trying to do weather modification in 1969. And if they were acting upon it in 1969, they must have been preparing and planning for it for a very long time. A very long time. 1969 is practically 50 something years ago. So 50 something years ago, they're talking about iodide crystals being something that's already there. That's nothing minor. We need to do something major. Well, what have they attained in that 50 years? Is a very good question to ask. What have they attained in that 50 years? What is HAARP, HARP? What are they involved in? What are they doing? And what are they doing in terms of building concretes on the lands? And how does concrete or cement on the land, how does that affect the entire atmosphere of the country? Which then affects the weather of the country. You see, these people are all involved in all these things. On the one hand, you can make drought during the growing season so that nothing will grow. And on the other hand, you can make for very heavy rains during harvest season. If you look at the UK, harvest season, if you look at the harvest period this year, it was very, very rainy. Very, very rainy. And if they want, for example, they want to diminish the food supply in the United Kingdom, what are they going to do? They're going to precipitate the clouds with all these iodides and all these chemicals with the planes that are going to go in the air, which is called chemtrails, okay? And then once the chemicals are there, clouds are going to start to form, and then it's going to start to rain, and it's going to be such heavy rain, and then the crops they're going to have too much water. And when the crops have too much water, they can't grow properly. They cannot grow properly. And if you look at many farmers in the UK, they keep saying this. The past few years, each crop season always gets severely heavily rained. It's always severely heavily rained, always severely heavily rained. And the crop yield is always diminishing. Why? Because they want to create a system where the food supply is going to be, again, decreased. So that's what they're basically doing. They're pushing the people. You have to accept us. We're the ones who have to look after the food supply, not you people. We have to look after it. And if you don't allow us to, we're going to have our planes with chemicals in the skies that's going to precipitate the clouds, and then it's going to start to rain heavily, and your crops will not yield anything, bar something very little, and that's that. And that's that. So these people are waging war against people, waging war against the people, but the people are so busy on what? On football and games and cartoons and animes and drawings and paintings and social media and entertainment and Netflix and all these kind of things is what they're involved in. Wallah understand. Falsified scientific research. Should we even talk about this? Should we talk about falsifying scientific research? COVID vaccine. Maybe that's going to be for another time. It's actually a very long topic. You see, each of these topics is so long to talk about because there's so much. You know, they talk about bioterrorism, i.e. COVID. Does anyone remember that? Terrorism. Let's talk about terrorism because there's a section for terrorism here. There was a discussion of terrorism. Bear in mind, this is 1969. Terrorism became very worldwide around like the 1970s, or you could even say around 9/11, 2001, when the World Trade Center was destroyed by the Yahud themselves. 1969, imagine you're in 1969 and someone's talking to you about this. There was a discussion of terrorism. Terrorism would be used widely in Europe and in other parts of the world. Terrorism at the time was thought would be not necessary in the United States. It could become necessary in the United States if the United States did not move rapidly enough into accepting the system. But at least in the foreseeable future, it was not planned. And very benignly on their part, maybe terrorism would not be required here, but the implication being that it would indeed be used if it was necessary. Terrorism would be used if it was necessary. Crazy, isn't it? Along with this came a bit of scolding that Americans had it too good anyways, and just a little bit of terrorism would help convince America that the world is indeed a dangerous place, or can be if we don't relinquish control to the proper authorities. And that's what they did 9/11 for. You see how many people were scared? Oh, they were scared. And then they made them target the Muslims, and they said, look, the Muslims are the ones who blew up the World Trade Center. It's the Muslims. They don't talk about that Larry Yehudi guy who was getting insurance payout of around $4 billion, $2 billion, $4 billion, and how he was allowed to purchase the buildings. They don't speak about how there was Yehudi artists that were in that building and they would put bombs around the buildings and everything. They don't speak about... They've even got pictures of the bombs on the walls of the pictures, on their own pictures. Some group of Yehudis came from Austria to the World Trade Center, took their pictures and everything. Then they started putting these bombs all over there. There's pictures on it. There's literally pictures where there's bombs on the walls. They literally have the bombs right there and there's images of it. They don't speak about that. They don't speak about those Yehudis that started dancing and they were celebrating the moment the collapse of the building went down. They don't speak about Klaus Schwab and many of the Yehuds leaving Europe, going all the way to New York on that specific day, being outside the World Trade Center in one of their synagogues and actually watching the building get hit. It's almost as if they had pre-information that this was going to happen on this day. So let me jump on my private jet from Switzerland, go all the way from Switzerland and go from Davos all the way straight to New York. So they already knew about this. And they don't talk about how there was around 200 Israeli Mossad spies that were imprisoned. They don't talk about this. They don't talk about that one whatsoever. They can't talk about it because already that whole land, we talked about how America, the founding fathers and everything involved, the Yehud were involved in all of it. So you can't really speak out against these people. Yes, Klaus Schwab was there with one of the rabbis in New York, sipping on his coffee, yes, watching the... And they don't also talk about how many Yehudis were already informed, those people that were working in the World Trade Center, that something was going to happen and that they shouldn't go to work on that day. One of them, supposedly, he had a hospital appointment on that day. And he says, I'm so lucky, I had a hospital appointment, some Yehudi guy. It's so funny. He ironically had a hospital appointment on that day. You know, the day when the World Trade Center, out of all the days to go to a hospital, having a hospital appointment, it was on the day that happened, he had to go to a hospital appointment. So they don't talk about any of that whatsoever. It's all the Muslims. You see, it's easier to find blame in places where blame shouldn't be at, because if they truly directed their blame towards the system that they actually have to, then they start to realize they don't have control, they have to do so much work, so much effort, it's going to be so hard, you need so much patience, and all of this. Would you rather do all that or just say, you know what, let me look for a scapegoat and then you go blame the Muslims? Let's go and invade Iraq. You know how funny it is? They invaded Iraq when supposedly the people who blew up the World Trade Center were in Afghanistan. Iraq had nothing to do with the World Trade Center. Just deep this, yeah? Iraq, Saddam Hussein, Iraq, whatever it is, they had nothing to do with the World Trade Center. Because they said Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and Pakistan, that Al-Qaeda were the ones who supposedly blew up the World Trade Center. And some of the people they had Saudi passports or something, as if passports can't be forged. Yahoods are very, especially the Mossad. You go and look at a Mossad Yahudi agent, he'd probably have all the passports of the world. He'd probably have a Somali passport. Talking like passports are hard to forge, but they say, oh, they had Saudi passports. Did they go and invade Saudi? No. Did they go and invade Afghanistan? They actually did later on, but where did they go? They went to Iraq. What did Iraq have to do with anything? Oil, of course. And let's not also forget about that's just another long topic, but we'll leave that there. So terrorism is something that's going to be used in Europe and around the world. Again, I've spoken about terrorism so many times. The goal, the aim, the objective, it's to diminish, firstly, for the people to think of Islam in a negative way. Again, they succeeded in that. For them to push the UN form of Islam. Again, they're somewhat succeeding in that. That's that. Financial control, surveillance, implants, and televisions that watch you. I mean, televisions that watch you is literally 1984. That was literally written in 1940 something about televisions that watch you. So how did they know in 1940 something, before TVs were even popularized and they weren't even colored? How did they even know in 1940s that there would be tools that are able to monitor you and watch you? It's crazy, isn't it? Because these people, as I said, are 50, 60 years ahead. So let's just go financial control. They say inflation is infinite. You can put an infinite number of zeros after any number and put the decimal point wherever you want. So whenever I talk about the financial system, this guy is talking about it the exact same way. Because they control the whole finances of the world. And the whole finances of the world is fiat currency. It's all controlled digitally. You just press 0 and hold 0 as much as you want. And then you press enter. And that's it. Overnight, you've become a gazillionaire. Somehow you just become a gazillionaire. If that's even a word. I probably just made that up. And a person who was working 50, 60, 70 years of his entire life, and he's saving 50, 70 years his entire life, overnight the central bank gets so annoyed, they get angry, they're like, you know what, forget it, let's devalue the currency 99%. 99% of that guy, what he's worked for his entire life, is devalued. Zip, he can't even buy bread now. He saved millions and he thought he's going to have millions in retirement. Poor old man can't even buy bread anymore because his 60, 70 years of saving up can't even buy a single loaf of bread. You see, these are the things that have to be spoken about, not delusion and illusions and distractions. These are the things that actually affect people in real life. It's not game, it's not anime, it's not movies, it's real life. There was more discussions on personal surveillance. One more thing that he said, you'll be watching television and somebody will be watching you at the same time at a central monitoring station. So you look at your phone, your phone, you got a front camera on your phone, smile for that camera, because best believe there are people that are able to look at that front camera and just look at your face and stare into your eyes. When you're laughing, you're watching all these movies and videos, you're laughing and giggling, hey, they'll be looking at you laughing and smiling. In the back of the camera, they get to see everything that you see with your eyes, and the front of the camera, they are able to see your face and your reactions and how you are. So they get to see the front and the back. Do you understand? That's why you've got cameras on the back and the front. It's not to do with selfies and, you can take a nice little selfie. No, it's nothing to do with any of that. No. Cameras exist in this world. But they would rather put it onto the phones, again, give convenience to the people under the guise of, it's easier than for you to get a camera. You have your own little selfies, use your phone, and they just smile at you. Go and look at any Google ad or one of the recent Google ads, and you will see that the ad is on the camera lens of the person. So he's looking and you can see he's typing on the face. Google are making ads telling you they can see you from your front camera. Okay? They make ads telling the people, I can see you. So that again is to remove privacy. That again is to do a lot of different things. But they can watch you. They can watch you. You know, they can see how you operate, how you live, how your life is, what you do during the days, and store all that information and data. Imagine having a monitoring system. Look, we've got security cameras. These phones are security cameras. So when they bring a camera and put a security camera in your house one day, can you ever say I'm against that? Can you ever say I am against a security camera monitoring me in my own house? I need privacy. They're going to say, well, we've got 20 years of watching every single step that you've taken with the front camera and the back camera. So where was it? Where was the privacy for the past 20 years? And you're talking about privacy now? Home ownership is going to be a thing of the past. That's another thing they talk about. The arrival of a totalitarian global system, okay, which is the end. When the new system takes over, people will be expected to sign allegiance to it. You know when there's a Islamic state, there's an Islamic state, and there's the head, the leader. Okay, the hakim is going to be there, the ruler is going to be there. Then you go and do bay'ah to the ruler, right? This is what you're saying. When the new system takes over, people will be expected to sign allegiance to it. You're going to have to give bay'ah to this global one world government. You're going to have to give bay'ah to them, indicating that they don't have any reservation or holding back to the old system. Okay, there just won't be any room, he said, for people who won't go along. We can't have such people cluttering up the place, so such people would have to be taken to special places. Do you wonder where the special places are? And here I don't remember the exact words, but the inference I drew was that these special places were where they were taken, then they would not live very long. He may have said something like, disposed of humanely. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Disposed of humanely. But I don't remember very precisely, just the impression that the system was not going to support them when they would not go along with the system. They would leave death as the only alternative. Somewhere in this vein, he said there would not be any martyrs. When I first heard this, I thought it meant the people would not be killed. But as the presentation developed, what he meant was they would not be killed in such a way or disposed of in such a way they could serve as inspiration to other people the way martyrs do. Rather, he said something like this: people will just disappear. You see, it's different. Like a martyr is a person who will speak the truth, and whilst he's speaking the truth, someone comes and shoots him, and people will see and honor him and say, look, he was killed because he spoke the truth. But when they come to you secretly at night when you're sleeping, and then they take you and then they drown you, and then they say to the mass media that they control themselves, oh, that guy, oh, he died peacefully in his sleep. You didn't die peacefully in your sleep. They grabbed you at night, 6 man down, took you into a car, drugged you, put you to sleep, tranquilized you, okay? Then they went to the lake, drowned you, okay? They are then going to do the autopsy for your dead body, remember, because they control the hospitals and the doctors as well. They will do the autopsy on your dead body, and then they will then tell the narrative to the media themselves, because they control the media and the narrative, and then they will say, oh, he just died in his sleep. He just died in his sleep. No, you didn't die in your sleep. You were drowned. You were killed. You were assassinated. You were finito. For what? Speaking the truth. But then when people just say, oh, he died naturally, they're not going to say, oh, he was killed because he spoke the truth, will they? People will just disappear. just a few additional items sort of thrown in here in the end, which I failed to include where they belong more perfectly. The bringing in of the new system, he said, would probably occur on a weekend in the winter. Everything would shut down on Friday evening, and Monday morning when everybody wakened, there would be an announcement that the new system was in place. And this is what they do whenever there's a financial collapse. They wait for Friday. And Friday, because Saturday, Sunday, the banks don't operate. The financial system doesn't operate on a Saturday, Sunday. When the world financial system collapses on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people don't know. Everyone's drunk on a Saturday. They're all playing around on a Saturday, Sunday. And on Monday, they waken up that the entire world's financial system has collapsed. And then everyone starts going crazy. So they've already done that. They did that 2008, 2007. They've done that already. They've done this where Friday closed down, Saturday, Sunday relax, Monday you wake up, boom, there's something new that's happened. So I'm not surprised if they're going to do this for the new system as well, because they've already done it for other things. During the process in getting the United States ready for these changes, everybody would be busier with less leisure time and less opportunity to really look about and see what was going on around them. Also, there would be more changes and more difficulty in keeping up as far as one's investment. Investment instruments would be changing, interest rates would be changing, so it would be a difficult job with keeping up with what you had already earned. Interesting about automobiles, it would look as though there were many varieties of automobiles, but when you look very closely, there would be great duplication. They would be made to look different with chrome and wheel covers and this sort of thing, but looking closely, one would see that the same automobile was made by more than one manufacturer. If you look at a Lamborghini today, a Lamborghini in reality is an Audi. Okay, it's got the same body kit as an Audi, but it's just flashed as a Lamborghini with a nice green color, yellow color, whatever it is, but it's manufactured by the same company. It's a different car in reality, but it's just made to seem as if it's different. This recently was brought to me when I was in a parking lot and I saw a small Ford, I forgot the model, and a small Japanese automobile, which were identical except for a number of things like the numbers of holes in the wheels covered, whatever. I'm hurrying here because I'm just about to end the tape. Let me summarize here by saying all of these things said by one individual at one time in one place relating to so many different human endeavors, and then to look and see how many of these actually came about, meaning the changes accomplished between then and now, 1969 to 1988, and the things which are planned for the future. I think there is no denying that this is controlled and there is indeed a conspiracy. The question then becomes what to do. I first think of we must put our faith in God and pray and ask for His guidance. And secondly, we can inform other individuals as much as possible, as much as they may be interested. Some people just don't care because they're preoccupied with getting along with their own personal endeavors. But as much as possible, I think we should try to inform other people who may be interested. And again, put our faith and trust in God and pray constantly for His guidance and for the courage to accept that we may be facing in the near future, rather than accept peace and justice, which we hear so much now. It's a cliche. So yeah, that's that, yes. That's just the end of tape 2. Then there's a lot. There's a few more pages, like 10 more pages left, but I'm not going to go through those 10 more pages. But you see, there's different aspects. You know, you get to learn about humans in so many different ways, and control of so many different ways, and you get to hear their agendas on so many different topics and how and why so many things operate as they do in this world. Wallahu musta'an. So, Richard Day is not an enemy of the state. He's the one who gave this speech. He's the one who's a part of the state. His family was close to, as I mentioned before, the Eton lot. They're all the same. They're all a part of the same. George Orwell is the same. George Orwell is Big Brother. And he shows you the side from the aspect of Big Brother and how they operate. And that's how he operates and what he supports and what he advances for. This guy who's he was the student of Richard Day who listened to him talking. He's the one who's given this tape recording in 1988. And his name, what's his name? I don't even know his name. Can't be asked looking at his name anyways. But these are just some things. But the more informed you are, the less of a shock it will be for you. It will be a shock for so many people because they are unaware. But for you, hopefully, it won't be such a shock. And I'll leave you with that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.